Are we currently in the biggest recession since 2008? The media definitely wants us to think so. Well, what is a recession? So a recession is an economic downturn in GDP over 2 consecutive quarters. Now, real GDP, which is adjusted for inflation, is in fact going down, but nominal GDP has been doing very well. The fundamentals in the US economy are extremely intact still. So today, the Fed's Jerome Powell had increased interest rates by 0.25%, which is 25 basis points or 0.25%, bringing it up interest rates to between 4.75 and 5%. Now we've had 9 consecutive rate hikes of late, and it is now the highest since it's been since summer of 2007. Historically though, over the last 20 years, every single time that the rate hikes have once they've ceased to continue to go higher and start to go back down, they all drop very, very quickly. I expect that to happen toward the end of summer of this year. And so as a result of everything that I just mentioned, I do not think that we're in a recession. I do not think that we're going to get into one. What I think is happening is a little air is let out of the tires so that we can continue to build and organically grow in a sustainable way. You can't really compare what happened in 2008 to now. I mean, that was a very specific subprime mortgage crisis. What we're having right now is just extremely high levels of inflation, and they're just trying to compress and try to bring it back down to a moderate rate. But at the end of the day, I think people are more concerned that we've had so many years of positive growth that it's due to turn, when in reality the fundamentals are still very much intact. So how does this impact Southern California real estate? Well, I mean, I think that the majority of the country is worse off than we are here locally, because for the most part, we have quite a bit of purchasing power. As individuals, I mean, if we're looking at the census median income, household income, median sales price, I mean, those figures show that we have a lot more leniency on purchasing power than, say, someone in the Midwest. How it is affecting us is that the cost of borrowing money is more expensive. So when you're going to purchase property in Southern California and you're not buying it with cash, your financing charges and your carrying costs will be a lot higher because the cost of borrowing money is more expensive. So as a result, I think, it's definitely going to have somewhat of a downward pressure on exit price or on sales prices of the homes, but I don't think it has as much of an impact here locally as it does in our other parts of the country. So what does it mean to us? So what does it mean as home builders? What's the trajectory, or what are the forecasts, in my opinion, going forward? Well, essentially what I think is going to happen is the following. I think that this is going to be the last rate hike. We may have one more 25 basis point rate hike, but I think at that point in time, because of the fundamentals, and like I said, nominal GDP is still very, very strong. I think the demographics are getting a little bit older in the US. I think what's going to happen is we're going to hit the inflation ceiling, and eventually, starting this summer, we're going to go back down to more moderate rates. And I think that once the rates start to slowly go back down, I think consumer confidence is going to increase. I think consumer spending as a result will also increase. And I think eventually what we'll find is that we will also have this positive momentum and downward trajectory as far as inflation, interest rates, and then the opposite effect will happen and we'll see growth again. So as a result, I think we're going to be doing, maybe end of summer, early fall, starting to do some increases as far as exit price on real estate, as far as decrease in purchasing power risk, and in addition, volume of transactions. So I think materials have continued over the last couple of years to increase. So I think the relationship as a home builder with subcontractors, for example, I think it has somewhat of an effect in that the materials are just a little bit more expensive because logistics and operational expenses have continued to go up for basically everybody involved. I think where it's really going to be more relevant for home builders, whether that be large production home builders like KB or Toll Brothers, or whether that's small businesses like ourselves, the cost of borrowing money is more expensive. So as a result, our soft costs, our holding costs, the cost to finance a project when we go to a construction lender is going to cost more money to borrow than it used to. As a result, it will put a little bit of downward pressure on the overall profit split, because the budget will need to be taken into account for that. Well, the good news is that, we should expect this. So pretty much everything, especially real estate, can be cyclical. So, what we do in this situation is continue to focus on what we can control, which is mitigate the budget, mitigate the change orders out in the field, continue to improve process, and really front load the design, the engineering, the overall feasibility of the project, so that when we're in the field, we're able to execute as quickly, as efficiently, and as cost effectively as possible. So if you look at this in the big picture, so less myopic on any particular now and the present, is it's oftentimes Mark Twain had a really great quote. He said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes." What that means in this context is, if you look historically, there's been many rate hikes. At turn of the century, 2008, 2009, and like 2018, 19, we had large rate hikes. And generally speaking, when you're looking at this big picture, is there's oftentimes rate hikes, and then there's oftentimes where the rates will continue to go back down toward moderate levels. We've experienced this before. We're going to experience it again. It isn't the first time. It's definitely not the last time. And what we have to continue to remember is to be solution focused. It definitely isn't prohibiting our ability to earn in this field, to build homes, to sell homes. It's going to be really important for us to be mindful of the big picture and know that this kind of stuff happens often, and how can we stay solution focused. As far as increased interest rates having an effect on our daily operations, I think it just is making us pay a little bit more attention to bidding out the construction lending, meaning going to multiple banks, getting different terms and arrangements from different lenders, and then that way we can really just be smart and be prudent about the decision making. It definitely affects the projects that we decide to choose, because it's going to be increasingly more important for us to be patient and to really take down the deals that really make sense. More specifically, deals with larger spreads. Those thinner, less meat on the bones type deals in expansionary times we can deal with. But now, definitely wouldn't do a deal unless the overall return was, to the intervals that we need them to be. And so for those of you that are getting freaked out by the news, or really just letting the emotions get the best of you, I would encourage you to continue to stay rooted and grounded in the economic macro and micro levels of the US economy, the fundamentals of it, and remember that cycles, waves, it happens. We'll be fine. We just continue to push forward and pay attention to things that we can control, taking down good projects, designing and engineering the best we know how, and to continue to execute on process, efficiency, because that's even more important now, mitigating the budget, than ever before.